Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to this Agency Success live stream with hosting.com. My name is Nathan Ingram. I'm the agency trainer here with Agency Success, and I'm joined by my good friend Corey Miller from hosting.com. How are you, Corey?
Hey, number two in the books, getting started office hours last week. And again, I'm ready to take notes, by the way. I'm here to learn too, but I'm here for you all if you have something in the chat.
Indeed. So this is the second, as Corey mentioned, of our Agency Success live streams with hosting.com. Really excited about that. I'm going to drop in the chat, if you are just joining us, a bundle of links that has all of our upcoming live streams. What you'll find there is the link to register for all of our office hours. That is a weekly event every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can log on, register, log on. That same, you just have to join once to access all of those office hours where you can ask any question and we'll talk about them together. We also have a live stream on dealing with problem clients coming up in 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to that one, as well as the SEO guru for hosting.com. Daphne is going to be talking about SEO for LLMs on August the 5th. So all of those links are there in the chat. Just scroll up a bit if you missed that. And finally, there's an invitation there to join our Agency Success Slack channel. You can do that with the link right there in the chat. So glad that you're all here. Corey, any thoughts as we're about to get started here?
No, I just want to say thanks for being here at the Agency Success Community. I'm Chief Evangelist, your community lead here with our best lead guide out front. So I'm going to get out of the way. If you need something, I'll be in the chat, everybody. We're here for you, and I'll post some of those links we mentioned earlier in the chat for you.
And before you go, Corey, there's a great question in the chat from David. What is the connection between hosting.com and agency success?
So this is hosting.com, part of hosting.com overall. Agency owners are near and dear to our heart, mine, and our companies. And agency success is a hosting.com initiative to be here, to actually have a customer community. So we've been able to pull on Nathan. That's a big first start for us. Myself and Katie Richards are your community team here, and we call it agency success because that's what this is about. Hosting.com, our aim is to be the most trusted company in hosting. And the leadership has listened, and this is what we're doing as a first step that's going to grow and evolve based on your needs. But the idea here is you win, we're going to win with you at hosting.com. So we're here for you, of course, for servers and all those type of things. And I'm here for you for those things too. But our job is to, if you win, that's the key. And we're going to win with you. And we're not so much worried about that. It's just, so all this time is just for you. But hosting.com is, this is our community for agency owners like you.
Excellent. All right, folks, let's talk about AI. So if you're like me, and you may have been working with AI for a long time, AI is wonderful. It can do a lot of things to help you out, to shorten the work that you have to do, to really automate and optimize some things that perhaps you were having to go look and reference for. However, a lot of AI output that we come across in our day-to-day work, it's maybe just not quite exactly what we wanted. If you've ever looked at what AI output for you and you thought, that's just not quite what I meant, you're not alone. And the problem with this, it's usually not the tool itself. It comes down to how we're using it. So in this live stream, what we're going to talk about is how to move into a better way to communicate with your AI tool of choice. We're going to talk about how these tools actually work and having that base understanding of the way that things like ChatGPT and Claude actually work can inform us on how to use them a little better. We're going to talk about the difference between some of the models that are out there. And then I'm going to give you a clear, repeatable framework that you can use to improve any conversation that you're having with AI. And at the end, I'll give you some pro tips that I've learned along the way in my work on API with AI. Now, we're going to be focusing in the examples using ChatGPT simply because that's where I spend most of my time. But everything we talk about is going to be applicable across really whatever AI tool that you use. So let's talk a little bit about the basics of AI. And it's helpful to understand where all this came from because if you're like many of us, AI just all of a sudden it's around us and it's here and it's what everybody's talking about and it's taking the world by storm. But it actually goes back, way back to the 1940s. In the 1940s, they came up with this idea of neural networks. And these computers were put together to learn things and learn from their mistakes, learn from examples, and start to make decisions. And they began to add, as we get closer to the 80s, these tools that incorporated back propagation, which means that the thing thinks about what it's doing and then it goes backwards to see if it made any mistakes. It's kind of like when you were in elementary school and you had to check your math. Like if it was an addition problem, you checked it by doing a subtraction problem to make sure it was all correct. It's like that. And so this system of a neural network and back propagation, it's been around for a little while. They were pretty primitive and slow. And you see things like early chess computers where you could actually play a computer, you know, with chess and it could think ahead and analyze moves. And then it's really interesting. This is worth a Wikipedia read. If you've never read the story of Shaky the Robot, it's worth it. You just go check that out. And so it was like this for many, many years, 40 to 50 years. AI just was this, you know, basic computer thinking, but not really terribly advanced. Big breakthrough happened back in 2010 when Google introduced what they called a transformer architecture. Now, we're not talking about the Autobots and the Decepticons. It's a tool that allows AI to look at all the words at once instead of just pieces of data. This was a massive leap with AI. It was the foundation of modern tools like the GPT models. The T in ChatGPT stands for transformer. So then, you know, in the 2010s, you may remember we had all these things starting to happen, like Google Assistant and Siri and Alexa and Google Translate, and then Tesla Autopilot. These things were starting to look at bigger bits of data. And then all of a sudden, in the early 2020s, researchers realized that, wow, it's better if we give our AI tools this huge chunk of data. Let's train our AI tools on bigger data sets instead of smaller ones. So let's train it on the whole internet, for example. And they were getting better results. And you couple that with hardware advancements in GPUs that could be adapted to AI tasks, and these huge data sets could be processed much, much faster. So this was like these two things came together all at once, and then boom, explosion with major advances in AI. OpenAI was started in 2015. Then 2019, they released GPT-2. And this is probably where a lot of us started noticing AI and agency work. So as all these things were coming together, OpenAI released GPT-3. And so for those of you that go on AppSumo, you may remember that somewhere in the right around 2020, all of these content creation tools started happening, like these things that would write words for you and do all these things. And that was simply a white label of this GPT-3 that was released. And it started gaining traction. And finally, November 2022 is when ChatGPT splashed on the scene. Maybe you remember that. Like nobody was talking about it, and then all of a sudden everybody was talking about it. They reached 100 million users within just a few months of releasing. And today, ChatGPT.com gets 5 billion visits per month, and they expect to reach 1 billion unique users by the end of this year. So it's huge. Now, why is this important? Because at the core of everything that these AI tools do, they're simply trying to make predictions based on patterns. It goes all the way back to the way these things were created back in the 1940s to just look at this data, try to find patterns and extrapolate an answer. All of this other, the way, as we interact with advanced tools like ChatGPT and Claude, it almost seems magical. But at the very root of all of this is simply patterns and the predicting of patterns. AI tools don't really think like we think. All they're doing is predicting the next word based on patterns that they've seen before. they don't understand anything. They're just using statistics. And so that's really helpful to keep in mind, especially as we're getting frustrated because the AI doesn't seem to understand what we want. Well, it can't, at least yet. It can't understand. It's just trying to use patterns and make predictions. So if you want to see an example of this, let me just drag ChatGPT over here. And I'm going to type in here, Mary had a little, and look what it's going to give us. It's just trying to predict some patterns. It's awfully slow. Yeah, so Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, right? The old little nursery rhyme here. Every time you enter a prompt, the AI looks at your input. It just generates the most statistically probable next word until it reaches a logical starting point, a stopping point. Now, if you add a little bit to the mix and say, actually, Mary was a WordPress developer and give it that information, well, it's going to change its output. That's interesting. But it still tried to put it in a short little poem here and, a little rhyme here and there. But it brought in some things about WordPress, right? It's just trying to make predictions based on patterns. So your response that you get back from an AI tool is going to vary based on the prompt that you give it. So the more context and structure you can provide to the prompt, the better the result you're going to get. So let's just compare a couple of prompts here. So explain the benefits of using WordPress. Let's just see what it gives us here. It's probably going to give us a list of just the basic things we know about WordPress. Okay, it's open source, flexible, user-friendly, SEO. Got it. Scalable. Sure. All this makes sense. Nothing that's unexpected here. Lots of content out there about this. Why use WordPress? It's just trying to pull this together into a pattern that makes sense. Now, if we give it a little more context and we say, okay, well, explain the benefits of WordPress for a small business, focusing on ease of use, available plugins, options for customization, and SEO advantages. Well, if we do this, that's going to change the sort of things that the AI tool is looking for. We're going to get a different series of patterns, and it's just going to keep going until it thinks it's reached a logical ending point. So this is a lot tighter of an answer because we've given it more context. And that's really key in how you use the AI tools that are out there. So let's try again here. So let's write a tagline for a WordPress maintenance service. And if we drop that in here, we'll get, all right, worry-free, always up to date. That sounds not too bad. Let's give it a little more context, a little more specificity. Write a concise professional tagline for a WordPress management service, emphasizing security and help when you need it. So if we do this, we'll get a little bit better, a little bit different, or 5 more options. Great. So we've given it a little more detail to narrow down. But again, in the background, all this thing is trying to do is predict the patterns that are happening. By the way, I neglected to mention we will be taking time for Q&A at the end of the live stream today. And if you have a question, please use the Zoom Q&A, which it should be on your toolbar. If not, it'll be under the More link, and you can ask your questions there. All right, so given all of this, seeing that it's just trying to predict patterns based on what we've given it, this needs to affect how we think about the AI tools that we use. So don't treat it like it's a mind that is doing its own thinking, really. It's really more like a pattern machine. Even in the more advanced AI tools that we use today that have reasoning abilities, we'll get to that in a minute, it's still just trying to predict patterns and output. The more better input that you give it, the better pattern that it starts to mimic. So if the AI tool is failing to give you what you're looking for, it's likely because we didn't guide the pattern machine well enough. Not because it didn't understand, because it doesn't really have the capacity to understand. So better input means better output. The more you think like the model, the more useful it's going to become to you. So the next step in this process of getting better output, start thinking like the tool, but now also we need to select the right model. So the different AI tools that are out there offer different models. And I don't mean just ChatGPT versus Claude. Those are different language model tools, but each of them have different models within themselves. So there are, in a big picture, generative models and reasoning models. And which one you pick can really influence the quality of output that you receive. So the difference is important. Though generative models are designed to generate text or code or something from a prompt. They're going to predict one word at a time, building responses from the patterns that they've learned during their training. GPT models, these generative models, are really good at tasks like copywriting, generating project documents, creating some basic ready to use WordPress code snippets. The reasoning models are better at complex multi-step tasks. So if you have, like, let's just say, if you want to create a code snippet, like there's something you need to do to, you know, change the howdy on the back end of WordPress to something else. Little code snippet, generative model is great for that. But if you're trying to write a whole plugin, and you may have experienced this, you're doing some more complicated code than just a snippet, you'll a lot of times get stuck in this cycle of the generative model is just not giving you what you want. And it's because it's not designed for that. That really needs a reasoning model that can think logically through a process, step through, and then give you the output that you want. It does a lot more work to pre-think the strategy before it gives you the output. So these models are really good at tasks like debugging code, like looking at the whole structure of something and showing you where to look, solving theme and plugin conflicts, proposing step-by-step strategies. So choosing the right model is absolutely critical. So for example, let's do this. A client's contact form is randomly failing. What should I check first? Now we're in GPT-4o. This is a generative model. And so here's some things. All right, that's helpful. Okay. Let's go back in and edit this prompt. But instead of using 4o, let's change it over to O4 mini high. Now, this is where the chat GPT models get a little, it's easy to get confused on all these. GPT-4o generative, the O4 model is reasoning. So let's switch over to this and ask that question again and look at the difference in the output. Oops, it didn't take it. Let me try that again. Have I confused ChatGPT? Possibly. Okay, here we go. So a reasoning model, watch it think through its process here. It's thinking, it's doing some troubleshooting. Now it's going to give me a response. And look, it's going to give me more of a process. So check whether WordPress is actually sending. So install a logging plugin, submit the form and verify. And then I can say, oh, it's not sending, nothing in the log. And then it will step me through. It's going to think based on that. It's going to think through the process. It's a very different approach to solving the problem. So when you're not getting the output that you want from AI, it may be that you're trying to solve a problem or create something using a generative model that you really need a reasoning model to accomplish more efficiently. So gosh, it's given us a whole bunch of things here. And we'd go back and just follow this process and it would help us debug our issue. Now, the question then comes, well, why not just use a reasoning model all the time? And the reason for that is it's slower. Notice how quickly that generative answer came versus the reasoning model. And also, even on paid plans with ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, your reasoning model usage might be throttled. So you may only have a certain number of prompts that you can ask the reasoning model in a given time period. Now, notice that even in the same conversation here, I switched back and forth between models. So I could go back here and go back to a reasoning model, or pardon me, a generative model if I wanted to. So even within the same conversation, you can switch these models back and forth. So a good thing to be thinking about is, wow, maybe I for this particular part of this conversation, I really need it to reason versus generate. That's a really important thing to keep in mind. So talking about the different companies involved here, ChatGPT versus Claude. It's an active debate. You know, people, it's like Mac versus Windows, right? People have their favorites. Um, Probably Claude is a little ahead of ChatGPT right now. It does some amazing things that ChatGPT doesn't. Although ChatGPT has some things Claude doesn't. So it really just depends on which one is going to be best for you. ChatGPT has these four primary models that we saw some of just a minute ago. GPT-4, the flagship generative model. All of these O models, like O3, O4 mini, O4 mini high, these are the reasoning models, with O3 being the most complete, and then the O4 versions that are a little faster. It can be confusing to decide which one, and that's even a little bit beyond the scope of our conversation today. But just thinking in terms of generative versus reasoning is really helpful. Now, Claude has started to solve this issue. They have three primary models: Opus and Sonnet. Opus is their big flagship, super detailed, kind of slow, but very powerful model. Both it and Sonnet, which is a little lighter, are what they call hybrid models, meaning that based on what you ask it, it will make the determination of whether it ought to answer in a generative way or in a reasoning way. So you don't have to pick like you do with ChatGPT. Do I want reasoning or generative? It figures that out for you and sends it down that path. Um, Claude Haiku is their free version. Only a generative model. It is very light. It's still very good for basic tasks, though. Now, I just saw a question in the chat: paid versus free, and I'll tell you, if you're not paying for an AI tool, I would highly recommend that you just invest in that $20 a month fee to get the better models. The quality of output you get with the premium models from the paid versions of either ChatGPT or Claude, that'll be the best $20 a month you ever spend. It is absolutely worth it. Beth says she's paying for 3 of them in the chat. So it's definitely, if you're not paying for one of these tools and you're frustrated, I understand why. Because the level of output you get at the free level, it's okay, but it's nothing like you're going to get with the more premium models that they offer. All right, so let's move into the next section of our conversation here, which is, now that I've got some background, I understand where these things came from and kind of how they work. I can think a little bit like the model. I'm looking at patterns and what I'm asking it. I understand the different models that I can choose from to get the best response. So now let's actually look at this conversation. I just want to briefly hit this because probably you all understand this, but at the very base idea in my communication with an AI model is what is called the prompt. So anytime I send something to the AI tool, that's my prompt. I'm prompting it to do something or answer something. To get the best results from any generative tool, you got to think carefully about what you're asking and how you're asking it. And so this idea of prompt architecture, it's both an art and a science. There's some things you need to understand, but also there's some art to it. Like, you get better as you go and you learn how to ask things in a certain way, and so forth. A prompt tells an AI tool what to generate. It can be a question, like what is WordPress? It can be a command, like write a blog post about WordPress security, or it can be a structured request, like create a table comparing the pros and cons of the top 5 WordPress caching plugins. It can do all of that. You just have to tell it what you want. So good prompts not only tell the AI tool what it is that you want to do, but also how you want your results to be returned. So have you ever seen, perhaps on some social media channels, somebody is showing or sometimes selling their sheet of magic prompts? Have you seen these? It's usually like this really, like flow charty looking page with lots of bubbles with different prompt formulas and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of them work, and they can be helpful to inform how we talk to our AI tools. But if you really get into each of those prompt formulas, They're really a combination of four core elements. I took some time a long time ago and kind of broke this down for myself. And I realized that to be good using AI, I don't need to memorize or have copied off somewhere my list of magic prompts. What I need is to get really good and train myself. How do I communicate better in every conversation with AI? And I broke it down to these four key elements: clarity, context, construction, and calibration. So if you grab one of those AI cheat sheets or whatever you want to call it, you'll find that every one of those formulas has some element of one of these four characteristics. And we need to bring all of them in to get really good responses from AI. So you don't have to memorize a bunch of complex formulas. You just have to learn how to weave these elements into your conversation with AI naturally. And when you do, your results are going to get consistently better. So, no matter what it is that you're asking AI to do, if you keep these rules in mind, you're going to get better at working with AI. So, the first of the four C's here is clarity. And really, what you're asking is, what exactly do you want me to do? We need to be really clear with the AI what we want it to do. So specific and clear about the goal you want to accomplish. Like at the end of this conversation, this is what I want you to have done. The more specific you are about the goal, the more clear you are about what you want it to do, the better your results are going to be. So for example, create an outline for a sales page for accessibility remediation services. So I'm going to start a new conversation here, and let's just give it this. We're in our 4.0 model, so it's generative. That's probably what we want because we're generating text. All right, so here's our breakdown. Interesting. All right. So it's given us a pretty good outline. All right, this is good. This is a really good start. So let's make it even a little bit better. We've been clear about what we want. We're building a sales page on our website for accessibility remediation services. So now, what background can you give me so that I understand it better? So let's refresh this prompt with one that's a little more detailed. So I want to create this sales page for accessibility remediation services. The target audience, very important, small business owners who don't know much about accessibility or compliance. The goal is to educate them about the importance of making their websites accessible, address their objections, guide them toward consultation or audit, etc. So I'm just going to drop that in here and look at the different output that we're going to get. Now, it's just updated its memory for this conversation to remember a lot more detail that I just gave it, which is really good. All right. So look at right out of the gate. Is your website accessible to everyone? Now, how is that different from up here? Make your website accessible and compliant. So we've changed the tone a little bit. We're not, we're showing the reader the need. So we've kind of changed this around a little bit. So we get a lot better output. Look here, things that text easy to read, buttons and links that can be used with a keyboard, alt text for images, and so forth. So this is a lot more on the nose for what I'm looking for my target audience, for my web service, for remediating accessibility issues. All right, this is pretty good. All right, so let's keep going. A very effective way to add context is showing URLs or uploading documents. So let's say that you've written out some processes for your business about doing accessibility remediation. Just drop those things in the chat, whether it's a PDF or a doc or whatever it is. It's very likely your AI tool will be able to read it, and it will take all of that information into the context as it's producing the response. You can also, if you've seen an accessibility remediation page that you like, you can add URLs or anything else that informs. Maybe I'm using Equalized Digital's accessibility checker as the tool of choice for my remediation services. Well, I can give it some links on the accessibility checker page that talk about how it works and all of that. And it can work that into the context of the response that it's giving. Also, just kind of moving out of a content generation mode here. Let's say we're in a conversation trying to figure out an error or generate some CSS code. One of the best things you can do that's going to give additional context is to upload a screenshot. I do this all the time. If we're trying to debug some plugin settings or whatever, take a screenshot of the plugin settings page that shows what's checked and what's not and upload that. And the vision capabilities of ChatGPT or whatever Claude calls that will look at that image and understand what the text is and provide it. It will understand what you've checked and what you haven't. It's a powerful way to add context. So the big picture here is give it as much additional information as you possibly can. So a lot of times as I'm starting to work with a new client, I create a ChatGPT project. We'll get into that in a moment. And from the very first meeting transcript on, everything about that client is in that conversation. And so that conversation is already trained to know who this client is and what they want, and what their website is, what our scope of work is, what we've done. It's all that context is already there. And so it makes the ongoing conversation much, much better. Does that make sense? So we're clear about what we want to accomplish. And now we're giving it more context around what we want it to output. Now let's move into the third C, which I've called construction. How do you want me to structure the output? How do you want this when I return you these things? In what format do you want it? So here's some examples. You could format the outline as a bulleted list with section headings and a short description for each one, and include 3 suggested calls to action at the end. So we kind of already have an outline here, but it's going to do the same thing again here. So we can change the way we want this to look. One of my favorite ways to output when I'm just thinking in outline is a table format. And so this is really helpful. We're going to try this one now. Let's return it in a table format with columns for section title, purpose, and key messaging. So it'll give us this as well. Really like this. Helps me think about it in more of a holistic way. There's lots of different ways you can output information from ChatGPT. So, and Claude. And this all falls under this construction. How do you want me to return this information to you? Now, the fourth C is as we're going now. So it's calibration. So it's very rare that the very first response you get from AI is going to be right exactly on the nose. It usually takes a little bit of calibration, but the better you get with calibration, you can make the final good response take you much less time than if you were just throwing prompts at it, maybe like I started doing many years ago. So if it's not exactly right, now we're going to calibrate. We're going to add more clarity, more context, change up the construction a little bit in subsequent prompts. So here's a few examples or a few tips that you can use to calibrate the output of this conversation. And remember, pause for a moment, go way back to the beginning of this live stream. Why is this important? Because at its heart, AI is just a pattern machine. We're trying to tell it what pattern we want it to replicate. And so by giving it more information, it can change the information that it's giving us by following a different pattern. So we give examples. If you like one element the AI generated, but not another, point that out. Hey, I like this part. I didn't like this part. Maybe if you said this part was more like this, give it more information, something else to follow, and it will change the output to be closer to what you want. You can also calibrate by clarifying mistakes. So if the tool misses something in your instructions, point that out and give it an example of what it should have been instead. Just don't say, no, I don't like that. Tell it why. Think really more like if you had a client who was reporting back to you something they didn't like about your website design or something that was going wrong, it's not helpful if they say, my website is broken. Well, I mean, I need more detail, right? And so let's think about ChatGPT that way. I want to give it all the detail it needs to give me the response that I'm looking for. This one is also really helpful. Asking questions. I do this almost every time I want a detailed output from ChatGPT. I'll ask a question like this right here. What do you need to know about my audience or services to make this page more effective? Let's ask that question. I'll often put that in the first prompt, prompting it to ask me questions before it generates, because that single thing will often dramatically improve the first response that it gives. So let's ask it this question and see what it comes up with. Oh, look, interesting set of questions. So, what is their sector? How familiar are they with hiring professionals, or are they more DIYers? What is their particular pain point? Tons of great questions here. So we can answer these questions, and by doing that, we're calibrating the response by giving it more information, by providing more context. Super helpful. Let's jump back up here, though, and here's how we're going to calibrate that sales page response. Let's try again to generate that sales page using the pass format, which, if you're familiar with sales pages, this is a common format: problem, agitate, solution. So let's try this again. Regenerate page outline using the PAS framework. And what you'll see is it's going to follow that framework. So we're calibrating the output to see what it feels like this way. Or another one, you might try the story brand approach, which is a marketing approach I really, really like. And it'll be a very different set of output here. And ChatGPT and Claude are both very familiar with what story brand is. They already have that in their knowledge bank. And we're just telling them, I want you to take this stuff about accessibility and follow the patterns that you know exist with this story brand approach. Really good stuff here. So if you've been through story brand training, I know some of you have, you'll recognize this. This is exactly what the flow. So there's lots of ways you can calibrate the conversation. So I've given you some examples there. So those 4 C's will help you improve every single conversation that you have with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. Darren wants to know, would this be better if we were using a reasoning model? For content writing, maybe. You can certainly try it. It doesn't hurt to try, other than you may be using some of your, you only have a certain number of reasoning queries on a monthly basis, depending on what model and what level you're using and so forth. So for content generation like this, oftentimes I find the generative model is just fine. But it's certainly worth, everything about AI is an experiment, right? Every conversation is a bit of an experiment. All right, well, let me roll into a few practical tips. I saw this question come up a minute ago with custom instructions. And some of the best ways that you can give context to your conversations with ChatGPT or Claude or whatever is through these custom instructions. Now, just a quick note, ChatGPT has global saved instructions, meaning I can give ChatGPT some context in the settings, which I'll show you in a minute, that it's going to apply to every conversation I have with ChatGPT. Claude doesn't offer that, but they do have project-based instructions. So we're going to talk about projects in a minute. So we'll come back to that part with Claude. But here, I want to focus on global custom instructions that ChatGPT offers. So I'm here in the app. If you're doing this in a browser, it'll be your little user icon at the top right. In the app, it's the bottom left. I'm going to go to settings, and then I'm going to go to customize ChatGPT. And right in here, you see the stored instructions. Now, I'm going to pull this to the side and just read it from here. Here are my ChatGPT saved instructions. Explanations should be brief and straightforward style unless directed otherwise. By default, ChatGPT sometimes offers really long and I don't want that. Just get to the point. Do not ever use introductory clauses unless I ask them. A lot of times ChatGPT will ramble on a bit before it gets to the point. So I try to eliminate that. And I don't know about you, I hate emojis in the output. So do not use emojis unless I request them. Now, that's basic. That's what's up here in this bit in the traits of ChatGPT. This is the part where it's super important. So 90% of what I use ChatGPT for is related to my work in web development. And so look at the context I'm giving it. And every single conversation that I have with ChatGPT is taking this into consideration. I'm a WordPress developer based in the USA working in English. It's helpful information. If I ask you to provide code unless I specify otherwise, you should assume it's for use within WordPress using my stack, which is a Cadence theme, Beaver Builder. We also use Gravity Forms and WP Grid Builder. So a lot of times I'll be thinking through an architecture issue, and it will know these are some of the plugins that I already use. And so it'll use those in helping me think through. When you provide PHP code, make sure it's created considering PHP 8.3 compatibility, best practices for PHP and WordPress, and avoiding security risk. Always prefix any PHP functions you create with BWW, which is a prefix we use for all my agency work. It just does that now automatically. Any PHP output is always prefixed and takes these things into account that I've asked it to. Unless I tell you otherwise, if we're debugging or revising code, always provide the entire code snippet or code files rather than just telling me to swap out sections. I hate that. Trying to figure out where this goes and here and there. Just give me the whole snippet instead of me having to figure it out. When you provide code, do not provide explanations afterward unless I request them. If you're outputting CSS, never add comments unless I request them. And if you generate jQuery, unless I tell you otherwise, output it this way, which is the format Beaver Builder wants it in, and it can just be popped right in the page builder. So these saved instructions save me a ton of time. So take a minute, adjust this, add to make it fit your workflow and your tool set, and drop it in your ChatGPT. And it will immediately improve the output that you get. Super, super helpful. Now, in addition to the global saved instructions that I just showed you in ChatGPT, ChatGPT also offers what are called projects. Claude also offers projects. So in a project, in both ChatGPT and Claude, you have the ability to add project instructions. So basically, a project in ChatGPT or Claude is a way to group conversations together around a topic. It really has a couple of purposes. First, that you can find all your stuff easier. So all your conversations about something are right here in that same folder. Super helpful. But you can also add particular project instructions about clients, or if you are in Claude and it's a code project, then you can add, use PHP 8.3 compatibility, all those things we just showed a minute ago. You can add those to your project instruction. So any chat in that project inherits those instructions automatically. So this is a really, really good way to keep things organized, to preserve context. So everything you're talking about in that project is contextually related. You can apply those custom instructions. And if you are using a team level version of one of these tools, you can provide access to others into a project that you've created. So very helpful. It's going to save you a lot of time to work with the projects. This one I love. I use voice mode for ChatGPT all the time. It was introduced back in October of last year. And if you've never had a conversation with voice mode, I promise you're missing out on a very important way to interact with the AI tool. Now, by the way, Claude does offer a voice mode, but it's only in the mobile app and it's still in beta. It's pretty good, but it still has a ways to go. On ChatGPT, you'll find it down here with this icon. You can also dictate to it, but the voice mode brings in where it's reading and talking back to you. Now, you might wonder, why in the world would you want to have a conversation with your AI tool? And there's some really important reasons that I've found that it is super effective. So talking through a problem or decision. I find that I spend a lot more time thinking about what I want to type if I'm interacting in one of these types of conversations with the keyboard than I am just like talking, stream of consciousness. I'm just thinking out loud. And when I do that, I'm able to actually get all the stuff that I want to talk about into the prompt. And then it begins to interact back and forth with me based on that. Now, everything that you do in one of these voice modes is going to be stored in a conversation. It's going to be stored as text. So you can go back and interact with it typing later if you want to. But talking oftentimes lets you think through problems better, ask questions, get responses, think through. And it also lets you interrupt it in mid, like if it's heading a different direction where you have a thought about something, you can just interrupt it with more information. And you're not like that rude friend that always interrupts you. It kind of expects it and it stops and it listens and it takes into account everything that you have given it in the prompt. So, talking through a problem or a decision you're trying to make, I do this with technical architecture a lot. Like I'm trying to do this, I'm thinking about this, I'm not sure that's the right way. And instead of having to word this perfectly, I just word vomit, boom, right there, and let it sort through it. And it does a remarkable job of giving me great output. Brainstorming is the same way. I will I even say, even if you're walking or driving, when I get out, I usually get out and walk every day, just try to get some exercise. And oftentimes I will pull out my phone and I will open up Chat GPT. And instead of listening to a podcast or music or whatever, I will often find myself in this conversation, brainstorming and thinking about something with work and just having this conversation back and forth about some idea that's on my mind. And it's going to be waiting on me back there in a conversation when I get back to the app at my desk. It is really, really effective in doing this. Wording lengthy responses. I find this is so helpful in voice mode. So if you, like me, have those clients that I just want to pick your brain for a minute or whatever, and they ask you this little question, and it's going to take like 8 paragraphs to answer. Well, why not just talk out the answer in voice mode to Chat GPT and let it formulate your response? It is so much faster than having to sit there and think through and type. It's just really effective. It's also helpful in generating SOPs. So if you just talk through the process of doing something, let ChatGPT write out the first draft of your SOP. Super helpful. There's lots of ways you can use this. And I would, if you're not using voice mode now, I'd encourage you just to try it. It's a little creepy with the AI tool talking back to you, but you get used to it pretty quickly. And I bet you'll find that it's an efficient way for you to think through issues and generate good responses. All right. So that brings us to the final tip. That is mastering prompt architecture. So we've gone a long way today. We've talked about how in the world these AI tools work, that at their heart, they are simply a pattern generator. We talked about how it is important to think that way in order to get the best response from our AI tool. We talked about a formula to follow to craft our responses through that 4C formula and then get better and better in that conversation by continually refining it. And we've given you some pro tips. So we've gone a long way today, and now we're going to pause and answer some questions. Now, if you are looking for the download, let me drop that in the chat. The PDF that you've been looking at on your screen is available at that Google Drive link that's there in the chat, and you can download that and keep it. We have several questions. Now, if you have a question, use the Zoom Q&A, please. And if you will, please... All right, I've just changed the questions, so you should be able to see everyone's question, and you can upvote the questions that you would like to have answered. So if you all would just take a minute and open that Q&A and click the thumbs up icon beside the questions that you would like to have answered, we will start that now. All right, so first question is from an anonymous attendee. Tell us about your image validation script. I'm not quite sure what that's referring to. So we did talk about using screenshots as a way to provide additional context. For CSS, yeah. So let's just say rather than if you want ChatGPT or Claude to output you some CSS to do some things, instead of trying to describe, I want 3 boxes that do this or whatever, take a screenshot of the design or take a screenshot of what you're trying to accomplish on another website that shows up and show it that, and it will very likely generate CSS that is super close to what you're after. And in particular, that's helpful for errors. Like if you didn't get what you wanted, take a screenshot of the result and say, this is what happened. This isn't going here like it's supposed to, or whatever. Really, really helpful. Gene, another image question. Do you have tools or tips for image generation? So I try to avoid using AI images a lot. They're pretty obviously AI generated. I don't use a lot of that for client work at all. A purely AI generated image, um, they're just not quite there yet. You can use Chat GPT. I don't believe Claude has image generation capabilities yet. You can use just a Chat GPT conversation to output an image. The best AI tools that I use for image generation are really the Photoshop generative AI, where you can use Photoshop's AI to provide or update an existing image. Again, if you have a question, please use the Zoom Q&A and we will get to it there. Next question is from Doug. Have you been using ChatGPT to create images for your content? So I think we just answered that one. I don't know. I can 100% tell an AI image. Can you? I can just tell, and I don't like them in general. Not that they're all bad, but I try not to do that. I will tell you one of the best uses for that Photoshop photo AI is, how many times have you gotten a picture from a client that maybe it needs to be the background of a row or whatever, and it's just not cropped right, or it's portrait and it needs to be landscape? It is remarkable what Photoshop AI or even tools like Dolly can do with an image you upload that's a portrait and turn it into a landscape, and it just interpolates the rest of it and generates what might be there. It's amazing. Karen, I'm curious the difference between custom GPTs and projects. I think the former is you can create a personality, so to speak, and the latter is just instructions. And that's basically it. A custom GPT, I mean, that's one of those terms where, depending on who you ask, they have a little different definition. But essentially, a custom GPT is trained like it's trying to restrict its answers to a particular area, right? So it's only like, this is a GPT that's only going to generate CSS, and it might have additional context added, like Tailwind CSS reference or whatever, to that particular custom GPT. So I would say, if the custom instructions are this much, the custom GPT is this much. It's going to be larger than the custom instructions and probably provide more specific output. Does that make sense, Karen? I've not really created a custom GPT, haven't had a need for it yet. All right, next question is from Ben. Any tips and advantages using the Chat GPT app? Have you integrated it with apps? Yes, actually. We're going to do some more training on this. It's on my list to cover in a future live stream, but it's one of the big advantages of using let me get this open here. A big advantage of using the app version of some of these AI tools is that here, for example, I can click this button. Oh, look, I can connect to Nova, my code editor. And whatever is here in Nova, ChatGPT is able to access that code. So it's really helpful to provide additional context. Corey and I were talking earlier. One of the big advantages of Claude right now is that you can connect Claude to a GitHub repository. You can connect it to your documents and calendar and those sorts of things. I don't believe ChatGPT has that available yet. Now, I will say this: ChatGPT 5 is imminent. It could be sometime this month that it's coming out. And ChatGPT 5, I mean, they're all supposed to be game changers, but this is supposed to be a game changer to put it back ahead of Claude. It's going to be a hybrid model where it makes a decision whether it's going to be generative or reasoning based on your prompt and do a lot of other things. So who knows what's going to be in store, but we're right about the time where they said it was going to be announced. Uh, could be this month or certainly this summer. All right. Next is from, let's see, from Rashid. How do you compare it, I guess, Chat GPT with DeepSeek? Uh, Rashid, I don't use DeepSeek. Corey and I were talking about this ahead of time. Uh, Most of my time in AI has been spent in Chat GPT. And the reason for that is I have all my projects, all my stored instructions, all of those things in Chat GPT ready to go. And moving to another AI tool, I'd kind of have to start from scratch on what it knows about me, its memory, all the things I've trained it to do. And so I don't bounce around a lot with AI tools just because, I mean, I'm doing this for work and I want to be efficient with what I'm doing. So welcome anybody's comments in the chat who has used DeepSeek. Um, I don't know a lot about it. Let's see. Let's get one more question here from Shramali. What is the best for schema markup? It's a great question. And Shramali, it really depends on what you mean by that specifically. There's a lot of different ways in which schema can be used. If you're talking about generating the schema.org micro data for an organization, let's say, just about any tool is going to be able to do that for you. Even the free versions of ChatGPT and Claude, that's such a known structured model that it's in the patterns for all of these tools. And you can probably use any AI tool to output that. Yeah. Question from Paul. Following up on Bruce's question, I hear people say they train ChatGPT to speak in their voice and or using their content. Any experience with that? Yes. There's one of my conversations, one of my projects where it knows my voice. I've uploaded transcripts of live streams and things like that. So it knows how I talk and it does a pretty good job of matching, not 100%, but pretty good job of matching my tone. And I can tell it, write this in my tone. And it does a pretty good job. And all of that is the result of giving it more context. The more it works with you and knows with you, and the more examples that it has of what kind of output you want, it's able to generate that. Gene, it's just so it's the issue. It's not that it has found me on the internet, it's that I've supplied it with transcripts and things that I've written and so forth. So it's learned how I communicate, and anybody can do that. All right. Corey, what else?
I love it. Yeah, it's How to Train Your Dragon. Um, I have a client and a friend who's a psychotherapist, clinician, and he wrote his second book and put the manuscript into it. And he's using that in his own voice to get scripts for videos, and it's been brought on. Even though the job I have, you would think I love doing video and all these things, I actually don't come to that naturally. It's just part of the gig. But so it's often hard when I'm talking, losing track, or trying to create a video, pop that in, tell them our values, what we're trying to get, give them some ideas, and it really comes out. But over time, it does shape, and it's pretty awesome doing that.
AI is getting better and better about learning about us as users, remembering those things. Both both ChatGPT and Claude are keeping stored memory. Now, you may not like that. It can be a little creepy, but it is keeping stored memory about all of us that can be used, like we've just talked about, to output things in my voice, to think about things like I think about them. And it's getting better and better at producing that kind of content. Corey, I did notice several questions along the way about getting the recording. I know we've addressed this earlier, but let's wrap up with this as well. How are we going to deliver recordings? And if people want more information about these agency success live streams, what do they do?
So apologies for it's just real quickly put together, but there is the link right there in the chat for the email. But if you signed up for today, which obviously you're here, you're going to get the replay email. And you can opt in if you want to get the future emails when we have more content that we're programming in and replays and all that. So the good news is if you're here listening to this, you're already on to get the replay. But there is the link, and I'm sorry it's ugly, but that's where it lives now. And just been talking with Nathan about a more set part of our site to point you back to. So we're working on that. I was trying to get Nathan on first. That was the big win. Now we got to get all the other parts going for it, and we will soon. But rest assured, we'll have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is only the second live stream from Agency Success with hosting.com. I'm super excited everybody was here. Our goal in all of these is to help you as an agency owner or person working with clients do what you do better, whether it's from a technical skill perspective or a client relationships perspective, business development. So your business world doesn't take over your world that really matters to you. So we are back Thursday for office hours. That is an Ask Me Anything live stream. We always we start out those office hours with a conversation about something going on in the WordPress space, in tech news, and then we move into Q&A from everyone. If you'd like to ask questions, you can do that at wpnathan.com, and you will find all of those links there in the chat as well. So hope to see you on Thursday for office hours. Thanks for hanging out with me for this live stream all about AI. And we hope to see you back later this week on Agency Success, where we go further together.